Hey guys, Greg here. Great to be with you on this Man Talk Monday. I want to talk to you a little bit about what thrives in the shadows. I've always lived in either northern Minnesota or Wisconsin, and in these climates, everybody's got a basement, and most of the time when I was growing up, it was an unfinished basement, and so often it was places that were dark. And if you've ever been down in a dark basement, there's a lot that thrives down there. There's spiders, centipedes, there's a smell, there's mold. Maybe you've been in a crawl space or something like that and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's kind of what thrives in the shadows. And I want to talk today a little bit about key relationships. And specifically, I want to talk about vulnerability in some of your key relationships. And that vulnerability and opening up is a little bit of an invitation into the light. It's an act of breaking through. It's like coming out of an eggshell or a cocoon. The context I was thinking about is since I was young, I've had this vision of creating and producing this massive musical production, but I really wouldn't tell anyone. I felt it was put in my heart from the Lord, but I had all the insecurities that everybody else has. I'm not good enough. People will say it's dumb. It can't be done. You don't have enough. You don't have enough time, enough money, enough resources. Why would you think you could do this? I mean, these are the things that are in my head, and just made me want to keep it in the shadows. And I would get involved in and do some pretty cool things that would kind of be close, but even doing that, I would still keep part of it hidden. I just wouldn't be honest about it all. We're no stranger to fear. Fear invites us to believe things that are not true. When you complicate that with sin and failure, shame starts to thrive in the shadows and grows. Condemnation thrives in the shadow. Then comes isolation and superficial relationships. You start to believe that it's too late. The dream is dead. And then you really start to believe that your identity itself is failure. Like that's who I am. But then you begin to be honest, to be vulnerable and tell the truth. You can come into the light. For me, that was attending the Braveheart Intensive in Colorado in May of 2022. The process we went through that weekend invited me into vulnerability and being vulnerable about what was in the shadows of my life. The belief, opening up to these key relationships that, these guys that even though I just met, we became very close right away, and just began to talk about, man, I just think it's too late. I failed. All of that stuff that I was thinking came into the light. I stated how sad I was that the dream was gone, that the hope had died. But I remember specifically this one moment, a man in his vulnerability looked at me and said, I can picture you doing this. I see you doing this again. I didn't even want to listen to him in that moment. And I didn't even want to think that he could be telling the truth because I was afraid to start hoping again. I was afraid to believe it because I just didn't want to handle any disappointment. But over time, I began to talk about it with others and in my Braveheart circle. And the craziest thing began happening. As I began to talk about the dreams I'd shoved into the shadows, fear began to lose its grip. The lies were revealed in the light for what they were. They were fake chains. They were invisible barriers. So as I've become more vulnerable and talking about what used to live in the shadows, not only have I become more alive, but it's affected those around me. And that's the craziest thing. As I became more vulnerable in my key relationships, others are coming alive. This step of vulnerability has invited others into vulnerability and truth-telling. It sets off a chain of events of light and life for everyone that's around you in those relationships. So I want to just throw it out to you. What do you wish you could talk to someone about right now? Is it a dream that has been corroded with the effects of fear? Something that has paralyzed you with shame? To think about it, does even thinking about talking to somebody about it just cause fear to grab it and pull it back into the shadow? Who comes to mind when you think about opening up? Is there a key relationship that you're like, maybe I should talk to somebody about that? It doesn't have to be a vomit of everything dark that you've ever thought or done or whatever. Just one step of truth, one step of honesty. You don't have to do anything after that. Just let it live in the light. Watch what happens when it begins to breathe. Watch what happens in those around you. I just turned 55 years old this week. Woof. It's so easy to think that it's too late for me. But this process of bringing this all into the light has not only revived me, it's revived the vision. I'm actually stepping down from a wonderful job that I have to wholeheartedly pursue this and pursue what God is doing and inviting me to. This past weekend, I shared with the friends the details of what I feel God is doing and the step of faith we're taking. And my friend's response was, I know this conversation is about you, but this is waking me up. I not only want to be a part of what you're doing, but I've been feeling like I want to be a creative again, but I'm afraid. But seeing what it's done in you takes away that fear. That's what he said. A phrase from my identity statement is, I'm a powerful, intense fire that attracts others and draws them together and ignites them and invites them to walk in their true identity. What's so great about that is I don't have to strive for that, to invite and ignite. I don't have to work at it. I just have to be me. It's who I am. Be vulnerable and be myself. I think that sometimes is the true self does not thrive in the shadows. True self thrives in the light. Speaking openly and vulnerably is the oxygen that fuels the fire. That act of sharing and vulnerability gives others the courage to try. That step for them to step into vulnerability, to be wholehearted in who you are. It's not something you can force on somebody. It's just an invitation to be vulnerable. It shines the light to show the way out of the shadow. So what thrives in the shadows? No good thing thrives in the shadows. Bring it into the light. Who is it? Who came to mind? Shoot them a text. So say, hey, got a minute? This might sound weird, but I just want to tell you something that I've been hesitant to tell anyone. Step into the light. I want to read a verse from John 3:19 through 21. This is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light so that it may be seen plainly what they have done has been done in the sight of God. So come on, let's walk in the light. Let's see what happens. Have a great week, men. Let's make it happen.